Hi, it's Patrick Hutzel from IntensiveCareHotline.com, where we instantly improve the lives of families of critically ill patients in intensive care so that you can have peace of mind, real power, real control, and so that you can influence decision making fast, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse in intensive care. This is another episode of Your Questions Answered, and in last week's episode I answered another question that our readers ask quite frequently, and the question was, how long does it take to wake up after an induced coma? You can check it out by clicking on the link below this video. In this week's episode of Your Questions Answered, I answer another question from one of our readers, and in this week it's Catherine from Sydney, Australia, asking, a family member of ours is in his 30s and he's dying in intensive care, and we're not sure whether it's the only option. Please help. Catherine writes in, Hi Patrick, thank you so much for your website, it's really helpful. I am just wondering if you could assist me with my question, please. One member of my family on my husband's side is being put to sleep for good after a shocking operation on his chest. He had a tube in his mouth, and that was helping him with his breathing, and the machine was just assisting him. However, just 2 days ago, me and my husband visited him. Our family friend was active and alive. He wanted to talk to us, but he was given more drugs to calm him down. And now, 2 days later, we found out that he will die. So, we are extremely shocked to find out that apparently nothing can be done to save him. Why did the doctors not insert a tracheostomy tube? Please see the photos attached. Our family member is only young and in his 30s. We know that he was trying to breathe by himself and that only 25% of his lungs were functional. Does that mean that there was no other option but put him to sleep and let him die? His father has got all the decision-making authority, but we are unsure whether his father understands the whole situation. So, what was happening? All of a sudden, our dear friend felt pain in his chest. So he was rushed to hospital, and then they discovered a huge tumor in his chest. He had 2 operations, but the surgeons couldn't remove it all and put him on a drip for cancer treatment. Sorry, I don't know the right terminology, but this is what was happening. And I was sure he can survive. It's very confusing and disturbing as we don't know what went wrong. Sorry, it's a very hard time for us right now. Thank you for your website anyway, it made me feel understood and heard. Thank you, Catherine. Hi Catherine, thank you for your question. I'm shocked and I'm appalled by how you are describing how your family member has been dealt with. In the pictures that you've sent, he looks far too young and healthy to be left to die, and just because he only has 25% of his lungs functional is no reason to quote-unquote put him to sleep and let him die without looking whether the right decisions have been made, and also without your family member being involved in the decision-making process. On the pictures, your family member looks like he would be quite capable in getting involved in the decision-making process about his own end of life at such a young age. The unfortunate reality, however, is that the intensive care team doesn't really want to talk about the issues of death to the patients. Even for the intensive care team, it feels hard, difficult and awkward to speak to a patient about their death, so the easy way out is to just put them to sleep. Even though the intensive care team is dealing with death and end-of-life situations quite frequently, doesn't mean that they are good at talking about it, and it certainly doesn't mean that they're not willing to cut corners in order to drive their agenda forward. The questions you need to ask are, have there been family discussions taking place before the actual decision was made to put him to sleep? If there haven't been any family discussions, the intensive care team is probably in breach of policies and even legislations, let alone not respecting basic human rights. Also, did your family member know what was happening? Has any of your family or the patient himself been involved in any decision making about whether they want to live or die? Having only 25% of lung capacity working is certainly not a good starting point. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that your family member needs to be put to sleep straight away. Often what happens is that the intensive care team sees a quick death as an easy way out of the dilemma, and families are being quote-unquote sold on the idea that death is quote-unquote in the best interest of a critically ill patient, whereas in reality death is the best interest for the intensive care team, because they have many competing interests, such as wanting to have an empty bed in intensive care for another admission. Also, the perceived non-financial viability of your family member's intensive care stay. Also, wanting to free up staff for the next admission. Also, research interests. Your family member may not fall into a research category, and the intensive care team has a bigger interest in treating other patients that fall into a research category, and therefore attracts 6, 7 or even 8-figure funding into the intensive care unit. In the meantime, read the following articles that shed more light on the decision-making process around end of life and or withdrawal or limitation of treatment. So one article that you should read is the 5 questions you need to ask when the intensive care team is talking about futility of treatment, withdrawal of life support, or about withdrawal of treatment. The other article that you should read is why you must make up your own mind about your critically ill loved one's situation in intensive care, even if you're not a doctor or a nurse. And the other article you should read is the 5 reasons why you shouldn't trust the intensive care team blindly if your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. I have attached links to these articles in the blog version below the video. Also, read our advice regarding family meetings with the intensive care team. How can I be prepared, be mentally strong, and be well positioned for a family meeting with the intensive care team, part 1 and also part 2. Again, I have put those links to those articles in the written version of this blog below the video. Also, check out our blog section and the Your Questions Answered section for more tips and strategies if your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. But if you can please specify whether your family member is dead already or not, I can certainly point you in the right direction about the options. Thank you, Patrick. How can you further leverage your level of power, influence and control whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care, and how can you be in control of the situation? You'll get to that all-important feeling of power, control and influence when you download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you learn quickly how to get real power and real control, and how you can influence decision making fast whilst your loved one is critically ill in intensive care. Your free Instant Impact Report gives you in-depth insight that you must know whilst your loved one is critically ill or is even dying in intensive care. Sign up and download your free Instant Impact Report now by entering your email below. In your free Instant Impact Report, you learn how to speak the secret intensive care language so that doctors and nurses know straight away that you are an insider and that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care. In your free report, you'll also discover how to ask the doctors and the nurses the right questions, discover the many competing interests in intensive care and how your critically ill loved one's treatment may depend on those competing interests, how to eliminate fear, frustration, stress, struggle and vulnerability even if your loved one is dying. You get 5 killer tips and strategies helping you to get on the right path to control, power, influence and peace of mind in your situation. How to stop being intimidated by the intensive care team and how you will be seen as equals. You will get crucial behind the scenes insight so that you know and understand what's really happening in intensive care, and how you need to manage doctors and nurses in intensive care, and it's not what you think. Thank you for tuning into this week's Your Questions Answered, and I'll see you again in another update next week. Make sure you also check out our blog section for more tips and strategies, or send me an email to support@intensivecarehotline.com with your questions. This is Patrick Hutzel from intensivecarehotline.com, and I'll see you again next week in another update.